And this exhibition is called State of Mind, New California Art Circa 1970. And what we did is we pulled a few of their performance photographs from this large traveling exhibition, and we pulled them down to Santa Cruz to show our students what was happening in the 1970s in terms of performance art. And it's a fabulous historical exhibition, educational exhibition, and we're lucky to have this group of photographs.
Yeah, and there's quite a few performance artists from that period. Well, you'll have Linda Montano.
That's right.
From that period. I think Annie Sprinkle's actually a little bit in the 80s.
Right, Annie Sprinkle's later. She's not in the show, but we're having, let me announce a couple of things. We're having a performance art panel tomorrow, Tuesday, April 24th from 6 to 7:30 p.m., a performance art panel discussion at the Cezanne Art Gallery with Annie Sprinkle, Elizabeth Stevens, Linda Montano, who will join us via Skype, and Mary Thomas. And so what we're doing is we're having performance artists talk and scholars talk about the show that we're exhibiting in the gallery. And Annie Sprinkle and Elizabeth Stevens are fabulous performance artists, so it'll be fun to get their take on what was going on in the 70s and how it influenced them.
Yeah. And so the State of the Mind, a New California Art circa 1970, is a part of a larger exhibition, like you were saying, that's up at UC Berkeley?
That's right. I mean, the title of the show at Berkeley is called State of Mind, New California Art circa 1970, and we just tagged the line performance photographs from that. So we are just a small excerpt from that exhibition. So this is like a teaser to get you to go up to UC Berkeley and see the whole show, which includes performance videos as well as sculptural objects. So there's a lot of these artists made sculptures to go with their performance.
Right. And then we'll also have a video here in the performance photographs.
That's right. We'll have one video by Bonnie Shirk, and it's about her. It's called Sitting, and she did these 1-hour performances of sitting in like either the Golden Gate Bridge or down in the business district of San Francisco or in some industrial park or along the highway. And then she also did a sitting series called Public Lunch, where she sat in a zoo, in the San Francisco Zoo. So those are very interesting photos and video.
I'm just wondering if somebody from our dear audience just tuned in and is listening to Shelby Graham, and you are listening to KZSC Santa Cruz. If they listened and they said, "Did she just say that somebody was doing art by just sitting?" Mm-hmm. That's kind of funny if you're not a conceptual artist or think in those terms. Would you mind just giving us a quickie? I know you're an educator. You've taught classes here. How can that be, Shelby? How can I just go sit outside and say, "Hey, I'm doing art"?
Sure. You can go do that as long as you document it and you have an intention. For her project called Sitting Still, she sat for approximately 1 hour in various city locations as a means to subtly change the environment, simply by becoming a part of it. In the first, she dressed in an evening gown, and she other times she'd just sit wearing casual clothes in the financial district or on the Golden Gate Bridge, and she kind of watched people looking at her, and so she was kind of commenting on the fast-paced society.
And also the thing is, I could call it art. I could go sit outside right now and iPhone myself while I'm sitting there, but she's already done it.
That's right. You could do a 21st century version. I'm sure there's a lot more interesting places to sit.
So what year did she do that?
She did this in 1971.
That is so early in contemporary art, when you say.
Right.
This is the first probably sitting type thing.
That's a good question. We'll have to
do some research. Hey, speaking of which, we have a scholar here who might even be able to give us that answer after, I'm sure, a lot of work, if it was worth it. So State of Mind, performance photographs. It's just performance art is so... it's totally hot right now. It's a big thing. People are talking about it, but it's still really kind of hard to grasp, to really articulate in a way that somebody who's maybe more interested in traditional art, let me see the photograph, let me see the painting, that kind of thing. But you're using traditional art to document this conceptual art.
Mm-hmm. That's right. And one reason Mary Thomas is here is one of the artists that we have, and we highlighted in the poster and postcard, is a group called OSCO from Los Angeles. And maybe I'll have Mary talk about that a little bit.
Well, let's just give her. She's going to be talking tomorrow about OSCO also. So this is like is it tomorrow or Thursday? I'm sorry.
Oh, tomorrow at the panel.
Yeah, tomorrow. So we're getting a little bit of we're the lucky people that get to hear a little bit more from Mary Thomas, talking about OSCO, ASCO. I had to get the spelling for it. OSCO is not a group that I've heard of before. It's an art collective from the early 70s in Los Angeles. And you'll be talking about this at the panel along with, again, Annie Sprinkle and Elizabeth Stevens and Linda Montano by Skype. Mm-hmm. And hopefully we'll have a few minutes just to talk about Linda Montano's extraordinary work, especially somebody who was working in the early 70s. And the panel starts at 6 o'clock at the Cessnon Gallery, and it should be till about 7:30. And so, Mary Thomas, tell us what you're going to talk about.
So tomorrow I'll be discussing three of OSCO's earliest works that are featured in the exhibition. The works are Walking Mural, which was created in 1971, and the following works are First Supper After a Major Riot and Instant Mural. And what's particularly interesting about these three works is that they do relate to that issue of, traditional art and referring back to artistic traditions that had been within the Chicano community, especially in East Los Angeles, where OSCO was from. The artists decided to play with the medium of muralism, which at the time had been a very, in some ways, closely guarded genre and had been used in relation to the Chicano civil rights movement to create images of Chicano identity and to create affirmative images that would hopefully transform the space of the neighborhood. And so by performing works such as Walking Mural, where the members of the group literally walked down Whittier Boulevard in East Los Angeles as images from a mural that had become bored and decided to walk away, they were doing something that was pretty edgy at the time and was stood apart from a lot of the traditions that had been established in Chicano muralism prior to that.
So the main picture of the exhibition called Performance Photographs from State of Mind, New California Art circa 1970, that's opening April 19th at the Cessnon, is a picture of the Walking Mural.
That's actually, it's of a piece called Instant Mural.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, that was my mistake. But Instant Mural was a later work that consisted of one of OSCO's members, Patsy Valdez, being taped to a wall on Whittier Boulevard. And she stayed taped to the wall for about 10 to 15 minutes and then walked away. And this was a symbolic way to respond to what the tradition of muralism had done to make bodies and identities that were quite dynamic, rather static.
It's brilliant. And what year was that?
That was in 1972.
1972 also. And OSCO means something.
OSCO is Spanish for nausea, and the group received that name in response to some of their earliest exhibitions of their work. Chicano artists from the community, upon seeing some of their early works, would say, "This gives me OSCO, this gives me nausea," and the group ended up adopting that name in response to those first responses from other artists in the community.
So do you think they were happy that they were getting some reaction, that it happens to be nausea?
I think that they saw the work that they were doing at that time as providing an important sort of a disruption to what was happening within Chicano art at that time, when things were, becoming codified in some ways, and the first exhibitions of Chicano art were being shown in mainstream museums, such as the Los Angeles County Museum of Art. OSCO felt that they needed to disrupt what was being established and what was being defined, and to keep it open to discussion.
And isn't it?
Can I add?
Yes, of course, Shelby.
Well, I was just going to say this show also emphasizes how the artists took things out of the museum and went to the street. And so with OSCO, they did walking mural and instant mural and, had a dinner for supper on the, in the boulevard in L.A. And Linda Montano also took to the streets, and she did the chicken dance in San Francisco. And so the artists were really reacting to the whole institution of the museum. And they're also, at this time, the art object was de-emphasized in favor of the idea and the process that went into the making. And that's where conceptual art, started to blossom, and new genres were created: text-based work, video, sound, performance, installation, mail art, books, and you're no longer bound by just a painting in a frame. And so they were doing experimental works, and so that's why sitting or having dinner out in public became a performance art piece.
Right. I also find it, what's the word? Well, obviously interesting that OSCO is also now in a retrospective at the LACMA, at the LA County Museum of Art.
I think it just closed, right?
Yeah, it recently closed, I believe, about a month or so ago.
It was part of Pacific Standard Time, which was a huge undertaking for most of Southern California, and all the art institutions put up work about Pacific Standard Time, of how California was really pivotal in the conceptual art movement, and so that was part of that, and it was a fabulous show, best show of OSCO work we've all ever seen.
Well, I guess what I'm finding is ironic is that their early work was a disruption to having the Chicano art aesthetic finding itself into mainstream museums, and there they are having their mainstream museum, one of the best, obviously, LA County Museum of Art, but it's interesting how art evolves, obviously, and
well, and I'd like to add to that just this whole exhibition about putting work back into the gallery that was once meant for the street or intervention or performance, and in one sense it kind of validates this as art, and it becomes the museum effect, and it's a challenge for museums or galleries to say, where does this work belong? And I think that it's for historical reasons, students should see this work in any context, or see it in the museum and see the value of it. And then, you do have to have video and you have documentation about how it happened out on the street. Otherwise, it will just kind of fade away.
Yeah.
So
it's ethereal without the documentation. OSCO was at our Cessna Gallery.
That's right. In 1983, Philip Brookman brought OSCO to Santa Cruz, and they were totally, radical to have this performance art group from Los Angeles, in the Little Cessna Gallery. So anyway, we have a strong history of highlighting performance art and conceptual art at the Cessna Art Gallery at UC Santa Cruz. Yes,
and we are so blessed for it. Mary Thomas, let's just talk a little bit about, we're going to be talking after 2:30. We hopefully will be getting the curator, Karen Moss, on the phone. But before then, I want to talk a little bit more with Mary Thomas, our the second cohort of the in the History of Art and Visual Culture Department. They're doing Visual Studies graduate program, and it's a PhD program that's just started. And you're doing some interesting work that OSCO is obviously a part of. Tell us more about your work.
Sure. So in a very broad sense, my research is interested in interrogating the cultural topography of Southern California. And what I'm particularly interested in doing is to look at artist interventions in public spaces that contest how the Southern California landscape was aestheticized and create contestatory responses to that. In particular, I'm really interested in looking at freeway structures and how those at once, aestheticized that landscape and created that landscape in some respects, but how artists in some ways contributed to that aestheticization and the responses that aestheticization garnered.
So, for instance, the murals that you find on the sound walls that line the highway.
Absolutely.
there's a lot of murals on the 10. I'm trying to think when 5 goes under the 10 right there in downtown Los Angeles. There's a lot of murals, a lot of let's say not mainstream white kind of art. It's more like, colorful in a way. What am I trying to say? That's what you're talking about.
Absolutely. And I actually did a research project earlier on that looked at People's Park in San Diego that had been established underneath freeway structures. And the park had been developed by murals being painted by members of the community. And at present, this park, over its 40-year lifespan, has the largest collection of outdoor murals in the world.
Wow. And you coming from San Diego, right?
Yes.
It kind of makes sense that you probably spent some time looking at the highway when you were growing up, would you say?
Oh, absolutely. And ironically, I was terrified of driving on the freeway, so I spent a lot of time looking out the window.
Well, that's a nice way to get around not having to drive. And so you're first year, you're completing your first year. And how long is the PhD program on average? I know you can't, not everybody gets through as fast, but...
Well, I believe that my anticipated completion will be in 2017.
2017. And that'll be behind the first cohort graduating. And Reshaping the Museum.
Yeah, I'd like to add just a little bit to what's going on.
Shelby Graham.
Along with this performance photographs from the State of Mind, New California Art, circa 1970 at the Cezanne Gallery, the Dean of the Arts, Dean David Yeager, is sponsoring a huge museum lecture series called Reshaping the Museum, Creating New Knowledge and Engaging the Mind. And for the last few weeks, we've been exploring what a new kind of museum would look like and, what sort of art we would show. And we've been looking at a museum of arts and sciences. And 2 weeks ago, we had Joel Premack and Nancy Abrams speak. And they're co-authors of The View from the Center of the Universe. And then last week, we had Jock Reynolds, who is the director of the Yale University Art Gallery. And he talked about Sol LeWitt and taking over a huge an art exhibition space that with lots of grants and to create a space for Sol LeWitt wall drawings, and that was fabulous. And then coming up this week is why we're doing all this promotion is Karen Moss, the curator of State of Mind, New California Art, circa 1970, will be speaking this Thursday, April 26th, at the Media Theater, and she will be talking about a lot of the roles that California played in shaping conceptual art, how this exhibition came to be, State of Mind, and also how conceptual art influenced a lot of the experimental art making and the art education of the state of California. So both at UC Santa Cruz, we had an experimental arts workshop, also at UCLA and Cal Arts. So she'll highlight how conceptual art really affected a lot of the educational systems here, and the artists that taught in them. So that's Karen Moss coming up, and then we can talk later. We have Susan Vogel coming in the following week, and she is a great filmmaker and talks about Elenatsu from Africa. And I could go on. Should I keep listing all the? We can send a website.
Sure. Yeah, I'm trying to find the website right now as you're talking. I found an article that was written about the arts division and Dean Yeager.
Right, it's right on the arts division website, and it's a long website. But you can go right to just go to arts.ucsc.edu, and then you'll look at the Dean's lecture series. So then coming up on Thursday, May 10th, we have Sylvia Wolf, and she's the director of the Henry Art Gallery in Seattle, Washington. And then Thursday, May 17th, we have Doris Ash, who is a professor in education here at UCSC. And then May 24th, we have the anthropology department talking about their show that is now on display at the Porter Faculty Gallery called Emerging Worlds. And then the end of May, we finish up with Barbara Stafford, who is a scholar and talks about neuroscience and the combination of art and sciences.
Oh, I love that kind of stuff. I love the neuroscience.
So this is all, we're just trying to, bring a lot of dialogue about art at the UCSC campus and how a new museum would take place here. And this is part of it.
All right, so we're doing a extra double Artist on Art this week, and we'll be doing a little musical break with Cesaria Evora, and when you come back, we'll be having a conversation with curator Karen Moss. So please stay tuned, and